here I go. So tonight is a question and answer, and we've written this, as Miss Macy reminds me, but I'm going to also remind you, you should submit your questions. Now, if you're watching this live, that's a great time to submit questions. If you're watching this later on, you should get questions and then ask them to me in class or submit them some other way, because we're not going to go back and read the questions after we've already done the talk. But if you're here right now, do it. So the question and answer is, this is an opportunity to think about great questions. It's an opportunity to think about what is important to me, what has been bugging me, what am I dealing with, and get some perspective. It's so helpful to get outside perspective from somebody who just thinks differently from you, and you might not agree with my answer. If that's the case, you should reconsider your opinions. But just hearing it from a different perspective and getting a different point of view sometimes is all that it takes to kind of shake something loose in your head and give you something to work on. So, questions? Yes, ma'am.
How do you maintain a positive attitude? I mean, other than being surrounded by positive people. I have a slight variation on that where I tend to have a rose-colored view, which is nice until you take off those lenses. So I just wanted to get your perspective on that.
No, I do both of those things. I surround myself with people who I like spending time with. I spend lots of time doing stuff that I like doing. I spend all day long doing stuff that I like doing. I'm just here in the dojo, and it's a great place. Part of it is the physical environment too that you're in. I mean, to say that it's impossible to always spend your time around people and doing things and in a physical environment that you love, it's impossible to do that. That's an understatement. But you want to still spend as much time as possible, and also think of it like, where is my mind going? Even if I'm not necessarily in these places or doing these things or with these people, but also you are in these situations where everything is really nice, but then sometimes we're there and our mind is wandering back to, but I got to take care of this thing when I'm done with class. Or, I'm having a great conversation with somebody who I really care about, or I'm, reading a book and really enjoying it, but somewhere my mind is taking me away to all of the mundane tasks or the things that I'm dreading in life. So a big part of it is simply the focus that we learn through meditation, and it allows us to stay present. So my positive outlook, as you put it, is a function of being in the moment. And I think that it's very important to laugh at yourself, which I do all the time, because I often will find myself even doing something that I don't really enjoy doing so much. I'm, washing the dishes or doing something that on the surface of my mind, I catch myself thinking like, when is this over? When am I done with this? When can I go do whatever else it is that I want to do? And I've gotten really good at catching myself having that thought and laughing at myself and remembering, like, this is it. Life is happening now, and there is nowhere else to go. There's nothing else to do. And like, truly our practice is to be here, present to whatever is going on, and to be able to cultivate whatever kind of mindset we want and whatever kind of attitude. So this is something that I tie a lot to my Tai Chi practice, but it happens in Kung Fu and it happens in meditation. It is all about taking whatever it is that I'm doing, or wherever I am, or whoever I'm with, and remembering that this is it. I mean, you blink and it's gone. So even though on some level you might not really enjoy doing what you're doing, just remind yourself that this is life, and someday it's gonna be over. Hopefully, hundreds of years from now, keep practicing Tai Chi and meditation, you'll live forever. But like at some point it's gonna end, and you're gonna look back and kind of wish that you were just more present and spending the time with your mind where you want it to be, just in the now. That's key. And just being present allows you to bring out all the other tools that you work on. So a really important one is just being able to choose how you want to be in any situation. And I think that if you can learn to, it's like I said in class earlier today, and over the last couple of days, we're talking about the fire burning stuff down. Is like there's no doubt that's a negative thing that's not good for anybody. But if you see that challenge and that negative thing as an opportunity, then you can start to recognize, like, okay, this is an opportunity to rebuild. Like literally in the case of the fire, it's an opportunity to rebuild something bigger and better. But that's not going to be an automatic thought unless we've trained it into ourselves. So part of our practice is training that into us, and part of being in the moment and being present is I'm here so that I have the wherewithal to remember to do that, to take this challenging experience and see the opportunity there and seize it. Other question? We're doing a question and answer tonight, so if you have any questions about meditation. We have no questions online yet, huh? I'm just going to start randomly making up questions. The question of the week was, I think this wasn't your question, this was somebody else's question? We'll take So Leah's taking credit for it. It was somebody else's, but it was, what was it? How do we appreciate Wu Wei? I think that's what it is, right? How do you appreciate Wu Wei? Which I think is an interesting way of wording it, which is kind of why I like it. But Wu Wei is inaction, and I think of it as like effortless effort and striving without striving. So I'll give you my answer to it. How do I appreciate it is through my practice, because without martial arts and without meditation, there was no appreciation at all for repetitive effort, for even just like straight inaction is just boring, just like sitting and meditating. Are you serious? Like that sounds so awful. But the way that we look at these types of things is weird. We're strange people. We start to love to pour ourselves into something fully with effort, and to be able to enjoy hard work and to be able to enjoy repetitive action. The repetitive nature of our practice is so key, because you can never become great at this, at martial arts or meditation or anything that is really difficult without a sustained effort, without lots of effort over time. And I was teaching kids class today, and I was having them hit the shield. And the shield is hard. Some people don't like hitting it at all. I'm one of those people sometimes. I don't love hitting the shield. It hurts my little hand. But these kids, they hit it the first time, and they go, oh, it hurts. And these are like teenagers. I'm not making 5-year-olds hit the shield. I do that too. But this class, these are grown kids. I mean, they're like almost as big as me. And they hit the shield with their punch, and they go, oh, it stings. Ow, it hurts. Look, Sifu, it's red. My hand is red. And I'm like, yeah, it's supposed to hurt. That's part of your practice. That's why you're hitting this thing. Like, if you can't hit the shield, you certainly can't hit somebody in the head. You're going to break your hand. And one of the kids hit his hand, he was just throwing a reverse punch, hit the shield a couple times, and he goes, it hurts, damn. And I go, no swearing in the dojo. I stood him in a horse stance for about 5 minutes. And I had to keep yelling at him to fix his horse stance because he was being lazy with that. And I explained to him, like, you can't swear in the dojo. And I understand that this hurts, it stings, and so does sitting in a horse stance or whatever it is that you're doing. Like, there's this quality to our practice that can seem like torture sometimes. And it's necessary for us to kind of put ourselves through that and come out on the other end being stronger and having the experience that goes something like, I could do that. That means that I can do anything. But Wu Wei, this effortless effort, is kind of a different kind of quality. It's a different way of approaching that kind of situation where it seems on the outside, at the offset, to be something that requires a lot of strain and something that is to be stressed about and to have to battle against. And while there's no question you're going to have those experiences in practice, we don't need to drag ourselves through that all the time. This is like the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable. It will come to all of us. And if you don't feel pain in every single class, you're definitely doing something wrong. But suffering is where you take it personally. And Wu Wei is like, hey, I can do this forever. I can just keep going and I'm good. I'm not taking this personally because the suffering comes on some level when we're expecting some kind of an outcome or we're expecting something to happen and then we don't get it. We don't get it, that causes our suffering. But if the practice, if the throwing the punches on the shield or the doing push-ups or practicing your form or just sitting still and meditating, if that is the end itself that you're looking for rather than the means to an end, then you're just loving it. Like you're loving hitting that shield and feeling that pain. It's nice. It does not have to lead to anything else. And if we can learn to love to just be in that moment with the practice, with the pain, it never turns into suffering. And that's one of the reasons why I appreciate this philosophy of Wu Wei, this idea of effortless effort. I'm just putting in the work and doing the time, and whatever comes from that is great. It could be nothing, and I'm still going to do it. And again, this is the decision that we have to make early on in anything that is really going to take something for us. Is you make the decision, no matter what I get from it, I'm doing it. And that frees us up. It frees us from the attachment to some kind of desire, some kind of outcome, and just allows you to just be and just do. It's beautiful. Did we get something?
Yes, there are 2 questions.
Go ahead and get that, ma'am, and just tell them we're meditating.
At what point does an enjoyed activity become considered a passion? When it begins to colour your outlook on things outside that specific domain?
That's a good question. At what point, say it again?
At what point does an enjoyed activity become considered a passion?
At what point does an enjoyed activity become considered a passion? And the suggestion was?
When it begins to colour your outlook on things outside that specific domain.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I think that's a good way of looking at it. I think that if you find yourself, I mean, for me in martial arts, obviously it impacts everything that I do, and I can't escape thinking about it. Like every situation that I find myself in, I'm like, ooh, this is kind of like martial arts in this way or in that way. Go ahead and do what you need to do, ma'am. Catherine, unplug the phone. It's not supposed to be ringing right now. Thank you. Okay, so the idea that it's going to start to color the way that we look at other things and impact things outside of that is certainly a good way of measuring it. Like this is something that obviously must be really important to me. There are also plenty of things, though, that are not our passions that are going to color the way that we look at other things and impact. I mean, you could have gone through something traumatic, and that is always going to impact the way that you see other things. And I wouldn't necessarily say that we are passionate about the traumas that we've gone through, but there is some kind of an emotion there for sure. I think that for me, in my experience, when I know that something is really a passion, it's like I can't see myself without it. I mean, I can't imagine life without it. I can't even imagine myself without it. Like I am, it is so a part of me that it's like, you know, what I see everything through. It becomes ingrained in a way that's like we become inseparable. And I don't think that's everyone's definition of passion, but that's been my experience. When something starts off, you're going to have if we take martial arts as a perfect example, you're going to start to really enjoy practice early on. Like, this is fun. And it's not necessarily going to be that way right from the first class, although for many of us it was. But at some point early on, it becomes something that you really enjoy doing, something that you enjoy more than most other things. And that's what keeps you coming back for a longer period of time. And then at some point, it's like you really start to see how this thing is changing you, is transforming you for the better. You see how it's something that is impacting other things that you do. I noticed that, you know, when I go to martial arts more often, I find that my mind is more clear at work. I find that I'm, you know, better at playing tennis or whatever it is that people do outside the dojo. And that's another kind of level of that. So I'm enjoying it. It's fun. I'm seeing that it's, you know, changing the way that I'm able to do other things. It's changing the way that I'm looking at other things after that. And then I'd say at some point it gets to this place where I've done it so much. I've spent so much time doing it, but it has touched me and transformed me to such a degree that I'm unrecognizable to myself and to other people. That's what happened to me with martial arts. Like people who knew me back in the day before martial arts, they have no idea who I am now. It's a shock, and that should happen to ourselves, like with the way that we see ourselves. If you look back on who you were a decade ago, for multiple reasons, you should be a different person. But if you have truly transformed yourself and you're unrecognizable to yourself, the kind of thoughts you're having, the quality of your experiences in life, if everything just feels like completely different, then that's how you know that you've gotten something that's really got a hold on you. Something is a real passion. So that's what I look for, and I've had it with very few things in my life. Martial arts is certainly the biggest one. Got another one?
I do.
Wonderful. Thanks for waking up out there, people.
So Dee's asking a question. She says, sometimes I find that my breath gets slower and slower when I'm deep into meditation. And I reach a point where I feel like breathing is actually bringing me back out or away from that perfect motion state. It's almost like I want to stop breathing. It feels like I actually could just stop breathing. How do I keep my focus on the breath without my focus on the breath being something that actually takes me away from motion?
Well, this is a great question. I've talked about it maybe once or twice before. I don't even know in class. I think we've talked about it a little bit, right, Catherine? I don't think that I'm going to do this justice by talking about it, because I don't even think I can do it justice in my mind without trying to set words to it, but I'll do my best. When we meditate, we sit and we focus on the breath. And the breath is not meditation. The breath is the tool that brings us to the meditative state that we're looking for, the state of mind that is mushin, no mind. And you will find at points in your practice that if you have this kind of slavish attention to the breath, that it feels like it's pulling you out of a state that's like deeper than beyond the focus on the sensation of the breath, because there is something beyond the breath, and it's not breathing. I don't necessarily want to tell you to stop breathing, because we might get in trouble for that, but I will say that the breath should certainly feel like it's slowing down, and deepening is part of that process. So I don't want to say stop your breath from deepening, just let it do what it does. The deeper you're able to breathe, the slower you will be breathing, but it should still be an effortless breath from the belly. So remember, I'm in meditation. I'm not trying to force my breath to fill completely and empty completely. That's a breathing exercise. In meditation, I'm just letting it happen. And in that, allowing it to happen, the breath settles and the mind settles, and it gets to the point where the breath is barely moving. And your mind can kind of just sink down even below the sensation of the breath, and you'll find yourself in a moment of stillness, and it's usually that long. And then one of a couple of things happen, but what happens essentially is you bring yourself out of it. You go back to the breath. You might say, I'm supposed to be focusing on the breath. You go back to the breath. Usually, in my experience, what happens is you get that moment of clearness and you go, aha! I'm meditating. I'm so focused and clear-headed right now. I must be hitting enlightenment. It's amazing. And you bring yourself out of it that way, through the celebration. But however it is that you bring yourself out of that, you want to allow yourself to just be in that place. And if you use the breath as a tool to slow your mind down and to get deeper and more relaxed, and then there's a point where the breath by itself just kind of goes away, let that happen. Don't hold on to the breath. And at some point, that moment will pass, most likely. And then when it passes, you want to just easily come back to the breath. Rather than that moment passes and I go to some kind of celebration, or I go to thinking about whatever else it is that I would be thinking about if I weren't focusing on the breath, you just go right to the breath, back to the breath. And then it will, when you're in that deep part of your meditation, it's gonna feel like I'm just kind of hovering between just barely feeling the breath and then letting it go and feeling nothingness and just complete emptiness. And then I go a little bit back to the breath, and then I'm just like barely focused on it, but nothing else, and then it just goes right back into nothingness. And that is something that takes a while to get to that point, and I mean a while like in years of practice, but also a while just in sitting today in this meditation. Ideally, we are able to put ourselves in that state immediately, but that's ideally, and ideally comes from a lot of effort and time. So more likely, you're sitting, like for me, I have to be sitting for about an hour to get to that point where I'm really feeling like it's just very easy and I'm floating on that edge of nothingness. Some days it's faster, some days it's longer, but just like know when that is and allow it to happen naturally. So we're not taking any more questions. This is what I want you to practice tonight. Try to go into your meditation with an intense focus, with an intention of getting right to the breath and letting everything else go, and then just allow that breath to deepen and allow your consciousness to sink into the breath, and then if it gets the chance to sink below that, allow it to happen. Sit comfortably.